Maar ik denk dat is baie oulik van dit om zoiets in te stel.
And Tilo van Westenhagen dominate the special vehicle category. Winston Yamaha star Richard Manning makes South African motorsport history for the second time. And mixed fortunes for quad racer Wikus van Deventer on the Land Rover Baberspan 1000. There was dust, there was mud, there was action in the Land Rover Baberspan 1000 recently. Sit back and enjoy the action presented by Land Rover Genuine Parts. South Africa's off-road racing fraternity converged on the Western Transvaal in the middle of March for the Land Rover Baberspan 1000. The race made history this year as the first round of the newly instituted South African Cross-Country Rally Championship. The Cross-Country Rally Championship brings this country into line with international trends and is designed to win South Africa a place on the World Championship calendar. Political upheaval in Bophuthatswana forced the organisers, the Baberspan Off-Road Motor Club, into a late change of route. The late change added to the tension where competitors were concerned.
I believe there's a new road today, so that will be quite obvious, but it's not easy to find a road some of the time. But the first benefit of it is we haven't got dust. And the main thing is we must just stay in front.
Defending champions and local favourites Arpi Reneke and Lucas Dreyer had their tactics all worked out.
Wat my betref gaan ek probeer om agter hom te bly. Ek sal nie probeer om verby te gaan nie want omdat dit 'n nuwe roete is en mens weet nie wat lê voor vir jou nie. Die gras is geweldig lank. Ek dink mens kan maklik hier jou voertuig beskadig deur in die lang gras te vinnig te ry. So ek sal my eerder die agterhoede dek en dan môre kan ek die krane oopdraai.
With a sprint series win already under their belts this season, the father and son team of Frans Chepek Sr. and Jr. were also among the pre-race favourites.
We're reasonably well prepared. It's going to be a long race, a very dusty race. It's going to be no mud. We've had a lot of mud in the last couple of races. So we'll see what happens. We'll start off slowly as we always do and see if we can work our way through the field.
The late route change saw the event run entirely on South African territory. The two racing sections of around 480 kilometres each were centred around the De La Reyville area, with the car competitors feeling each other out in the early stages of Racing Section 1. With the majority of the route passing through vast expanses of Western Transvaal mealie and sunflower fields, the rally was expected to be fast, with an intriguing duel in the offing between the high-tech space-frame cars and the bigger and bulkier bakkies. In sweltering conditions and with 2 days of tough racing ahead, no one could blame crews for a conservative approach on day one. The Baberspan always provides for a high attrition rate, and this was a factor of which crews were also acutely aware. Back at the start, the big contingent of bikers was preparing to get underway 2.5 hours after the cars. Lesotho star Patrick Andrews drew the number 1 starting berth, but would have preferred to see someone else lead away the pack.
I actually don't like starting first at all. I like somebody to set the pace for me in front. I'm just going to wait for Alfie to come past and then I'll see if I can stick to that pace.
After a win in the Honeylube Sun City 400, Springbok and defending champion Alfie Cox was the outright favourite to win the motorcycle category.
Baberspan is a hell of a lot faster race than what Sun City is. So, you know, we've got people like Yuri Human on a 500, Patrick Andrews, and he's also one that can do very well. Willie Ireland, he's itching for a win. I know, I've just heard along the camps. And I always seem like the man to beat, and it's a little bit pressure on me, but I'm just going to go and ride the best race I can.
Also among the favourites in the motorcycle section was the enigmatic Willie Ireland. Most experts expected a real scrap to develop between Cox and Ireland. Pre-race favourite among the small capacity 200 class machines was Winston Yamaha star Richard Manning. With the cars already well into the race, local heroes Arpi Reneke and Lucas Dreyer in the Toyota Land Cruiser were first on the road. Making full use of plenty of local knowledge, Reneke and Dreyer had moved ahead of fellow Springboks Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek in the factory Toyota Hilux. Coetzee and Leek were already running into overheating problems, and Klaus Degener and Tilo van Westenhagen were starting to catch the pair in the BP Raceco. As aggressive as ever, Degener was pushing hard. Now driving a raceco after years in a Chenoweth, Degener and von Westenhagen had the Chepek father and son combination hot on their heels in the V Motors Porsche raceco. Fifth on the road and the first in the single-seater space frame cars was Richard Carolyn. Affectionately known as Obut among the off-road fraternity, Carolyn was also running into early problems with a slipping clutch. The Fincham brothers, Cecil and Michael, were having a good run in the privately entered Toyota Land Cruiser and were rapidly catching Carolyn, who was heading for early retirement. Behind the Finchams, another set of brothers, Herman and Karl-Heinz Sulwald, were pushing hard in another raceco. Also up with the early leaders were Craig Draper and Robin Houghton in the Draper Excavator Hire Raceco Porsche. Engine failure was just around the corner for the pair after an encouraging start to the event. Another father and son combination, Alfie and Tommy van Vuren, were also making steady progress in their Toyota Hilux. Van Vuren Sr. is a wily old hand at off-road racing, but the Toyota was slowly being overhauled by the consistent Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen in the Lowlet Sandmaster. With the cars setting off at 1-minute intervals, crews were starting to up the pace. Results at the end of racing section 1 would be calculated on corrected time, and teams were looking at picking up places. Behind Niels Eriksson and Johnny Walker, a flying Theo and Eugene Coetzee were looking for a way past Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Land Rover. Barker and Redding were sticking to a pre-race game plan and did the gentlemanly thing by allowing the Coetzees through. With the motorcycles now also in their stride, it came as no surprise to see Alfie Cox first on the road in the Pro Action KTM. Not far behind the Natal Springbok came Willie Ireland on the SKF Dalmas Diesel Suzuki. Cox and Ireland had moved ahead of Patrick Andrews on the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki, with Andrews content to let the forerunners set the pace. Fourth on the road was the first of the Winston Yamaha riders, Daryl Curtis. Not far behind Curtis was the 500 class leader Yuri Human on the big Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki. Human was being chased by Chris Dodd on the second Winston Yamaha, with Tom Claassen going well and holding down second place in the 500 class on the privately entered Kawasaki. The pace in the 200 class was being set by Alex Vowles on the Antilex Dairy Kawasaki, with Richard Manning and Graham McLaughlin doing the chasing. Back at the service and refuel centre at Baberspan, tension was starting to build among the service crews. As is the case with Formula One racing, visits to the pits can often decide the outcome of an off-road race. Klaus Degener and Tille van Westenhagen were first into the service area in the BP raceco.
Everything all right?
Service crews were busy working on the BP raceco when the Chepeks appeared on the scene. In what was obviously a pre-planned piece of strategy, the Chepeks gave the service area a miss and took over the number 1 place on the road, while Degener and von Westenhagen were still in the service area. Next in were Arpi Reneke and Lucas Dreyer in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser. A broken windscreen, the product of a coming together with a guinea fowl, was delicately removed. While Reneke's service crew moved into action, Degener and von Westenhagen took off after the Chepeks, who had snatched a 4-minute lead by doing away with calling into the refuel area.
Okay, good. Richard? Ons nie jou piepie in. Ons het gesukkels met daai windscreens kan ek sien nie.
The Kasi Coetzee Richard Leek Toyota Hilux and the Sulwald brothers, Herman and Karl-Heinz, arrived at the service centre together. The Sulwalds had sighed their way through the field, but the Coetzee Leek combination was in trouble with an overheating problem. Reneke and Dreyer left the service area with the Sulwalds hot on their heels. The ploy of missing out the service area had given Franz Chepek Sr. and Franz Chepek Jr. a valuable cushion over the rest of the pack. The pair were going along like a house on fire with sections of the route ultra fast. Unlike in many previous Baberspan events, wet sections were few and far between. The Chepex were still first on the road, but disaster was just around the corner, with the pair forced to retire with mechanical problems. Klaus Degener was chasing his first national championship victory in 3 years. On a number of occasions in recent seasons, the ever-impetuous Degener has let his aggressive instincts get the better of him. On more than one occasion, Degener has let victory slip through his fingers, but this time out was adopting a more circumspect attitude. Now driving with an unconventional air conditioning system in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser, Arpi Reneke and Lucas Dreyer had some time to make up. The shattered windscreen on the run into the service area slowed down the pair, and they were keen to win back precious seconds. Behind the Springbok pair, the Sewells were still on a charge. After starting 18th, the brothers were now 4th on the road. While the Sewells continued to make up time, matters had not gone so smoothly for other crews. With the Chepex and Cassie Coetzee and Richard Leek headed for retirement, crews already enjoying a beer and a braai included Richard Schilling and Jeff Bell, Richard Carolyn, Stan Illman and Frans Stangl, and Craig Draper and Robin Houghton. Others, like the Fincham brothers in the Toyota Land Cruiser, continued to plough on regardless. Also still running strongly were Cliff Barker and Mike Redden in the Land Rover. For the Bucky Brigade, the wet sections were no problem, and like Barker and Redden, the bigger trucks sailed through the mud like battle cruisers under full steam. Also still steadily working their way through the pack were Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen in the Lowlet Sandmaster. There are times in off-road racing when a windscreen would be nice. The Coetzee brothers, Theo and Eugene, had the luxury of a closed cab, but could have done with four-wheel drive in the muddy sections. On the plus side for the spectators, the Chevy provided for some spectacular action. While the cars were ploughing through the muddy sections, it was dry and dusty where the leaders in the motorcycle section were concerned. Alfie Cox was still first on the road on the Pro Action KTM, with Willie Island second on the SKF Delmas Diesel Suzuki. The unfortunate Island was cruising slowly along, and a sore shoulder, the product of an encounter with a fence, was soon to see him join the list of retirements. Using to good effect the greater power of the big Lesotho office equipment Kawasaki 500, Yuri Human was on his way to a fast time. Human had a comfortable lead in the 500 class and had moved ahead of teammate Patrick Andrews, who was fourth on the road and third in the 250 class. The 200 class had a new leader in Richard Manning on the Winston Yamaha. Manning had caught up with teammate Daryl Curtis on the 250 class machine. In the quad racer category, pre-race favourite Vickers van Deventer was the man out in front on the Yamaha Banshee. Van Deventer made history when he crossed the line first overall in last year's Baberspan, but with the quads racing on an invitation basis, his win was never officially recognised. This year, the quads were granted national championship status for the first time, with Van Deventer again looking to be in a class of his own. First car home at the end of racing section 1 was the Sewell Transport Raceco in the hands of Herman and Karl-Heinz Sewell. On corrected time, the Sewells led the special vehicle category ahead of Klaus Degener and Tille van Westenhagen, with Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen third. Arpi Reneke and Lucas Dreyer in the Toyota Land Cruiser led the production vehicle category ahead of Cliff Barker and Mike Redden and the Van Vuren father and son team. The first motorcycle home was Alfie Cox, who also led the 250 class. Yuri Human was second and leading the 500 class, with Richard Manning, the top 200 finisher, in fourth place overall. In the quad racer class, Vickers van Deventer came home with a comfortable lead over Billy Coetzee, with Army Roberts third, Christo van der Merwe fourth, and Daryl O'Keefe fifth. For crews and riders with a tough 500 kilometres behind them, the day is not yet finished. A cold shower and beer beckon, but battered machinery sometimes has to be restored to health for the assault on racing section 2. For some, the problems are weightier than others. Stay with us for more action from the Land Rover Baberspan 1000. For some teams, including Cliff Barker and Mike Redden.
Well, look, we had a bit of a slipping clutch yesterday. We've taken it out and had a look, and it's got a bit of oil on it, so we're reasonably confident we can last the day with it.
Also making an early start in the impound area alongside the Land Rover team were Theo and Eugene Coetzee. The Bloemfontein pair were forced to make a special overnight trip to Johannesburg to pick up spare parts for the Chev bakkie. For off-roaders, it's all part of the challenge. On the start line, overnight leader Herman Solwald was expecting an early challenge from Klaus Degener.
Ja, ek dink as Klaus, ek glo hy sal ons seker op stadiums inhaal. As hy wil verbygaan, sal ons hom laat gaan en hom maar net probeer volg en hoop hy maak 'n fout ergens. En dan maar weer kyk of ons weer kan verbykom.
There were early indications it was going to be a tough day for the Solwalds. Pulling away from the line, ominous clouds of blue smoke were already pouring from the back of the V8-powered Raceco. There was never any doubt that Degener was going to attack from the word go.
Well, I think, that's a V8 power running in front of us there. I think on the straights he's going to leave us standing anyway. So we're just going to keep it clean and try not to have any wrong slots. And keep downtime off the road. If we can keep downtime off, I think we've got a good chance of coming in ahead.
While there was an intriguing battle in store in the special vehicle category, RP Reyneke and Lucas Dreyer had a firm grip on the production vehicle category. Also well placed in the special vehicle category were Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen, but they were under early attack from Nardus Alberts and Pieter Mathieu in their Rapsa Raceco. The biggest threat to Reyneke and Dreyer in the production vehicle class were Alfred and Tommy van Vuren in the privately entered Toyota Hilux. As usual, Van Vuren was motoring steadily along and taking no chances. Marius and Edith Bahrain were well placed in the special vehicle category and were going along steadily without any heroics. After a disappointing day one and a near catastrophic moment in the pits when the car caught fire, John Lambert and Eric Skoltz were starting to claw their way back up the field. Niels Eriksson and Johnny Walker were still running strongly, but the Fincham brothers had to make major overnight repairs to their Toyota Land Cruiser to make it to day 2 start. Further down the field, there were mixed fortunes for some of the more fancied teams and for some of the lesser-known battlers. Giel Nel and Johan Grobler were headed for retirement in the Chev Special. Local crew Niels Lemmer and Johan Leroux in a Toyota Hilux were still going strong and second to the Van Vurens in Class E. Also going well were Gelle van der Merwe and Eddie Botha in a Nissan. The pair were third in Class F behind the Coetzee brothers and Ralph Henderson-Jaap Zeeman combination. For Nardus Alberts and Pieter Mathieu in the Rapsa Raceco, the Land Rover Baberspan 1000 was an event they would rather forget. And on day 2, they were overtaken in a cloud of dust by quad racer leader Wickers van Deventer. Running a distant second was Billy Coetzee. And now for something completely different, as Army Roberts demonstrates how not to dismount from a rapidly mobile quad racer. Quad racers 1, riders 0. The intrepid Mr. Roberts looked a little bemused as his trusty steed waited for him to remount. Roberts, with a little help from a vice grip in place of a broken gear lever, had the last laugh when he soldiered home to win his first national championship event. On the bike side, there was drama unfolding. Yuri Human had moved into the lead on the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawasaki when overnight leader Alfie Cox picked up an early puncture. Cox's misfortunes were compounded when he picked up another puncture on the run into the service stop. With Cox forced to slow right down, Richard Manning took advantage to close up on the Pro Action KTM superstar in third place on the Winston Yamaha. The first and only rider ever to win a national championship event on a 200 class machine, Manning was now poised to repeat the feat. Behind him, teammate Daryl Curtis was also in trouble with a flat tyre as he limped towards the service area. The race had suddenly come alive. Chris Dodd was now up to 5th on another Winston Yamaha after a consistent ride. Possible problems were also looming for Dodd because right on his heels he had Alex Vowles on the Antilex Dairy Kawasaki. With the action hotting up, there was also problems for Vowles with Graham McLaughlin on the Lesotho Office Equipment Kawa, also within striking distance. The field had started to close up and Hein van der Walt found himself in the top 10. There was plenty more drama in the service area. Yuri Human's motor was on the verge of seizing. The unfortunate Human could only look on in despair and frustration as the Lesotho Office Equipment team set about replacing the Kawasaki's radiators. While work was being carried out on Human's bike, Cox arrived on the scene with his pit crew forced into changing the rear wheel on the Pro Action KTM. All the while, precious minutes were ticking away.
Hold the bike. Run with the bike. Push it down, push it down.
It was white-knuckle time for Human, Cox and their service crews. While they worked frantically on their respective machines, Richard Manning pulled into the service area. Damaged engine parts told a sad tale where the unfortunate Human was concerned. Human's expression told its own story as Manning, with a fresh load of fuel, left the pits with the Winston Yamaha now in the lead. Great work by Cox's crew saw the little Springboks set off only seconds after Manning, but the excitement was not over yet. Daryl Curtis also needed a tyre change, and this time it was the Winston Yamaha team that had to spring into frantic action. More good work saw Curtis take off after Cox, with Human still in the service area. The whole complexion of the race had taken a sudden turn.
Give these oaks anything, they'll break it, eh?
There's still more drama to come in the Land Rover Baberspan 1000. Out on the car route, a charging Klaus Degener and Thilo van Westenhagen in the BP Raceco had moved ahead of Herman and Karl-Heinz Sulwald. Degener was all aggression, with the Sulwalds battling with a head gasket problem that saw the pair use up 15 litres of oil as they desperately tried to stay in touch with the former champion show jumper. It was a gutsy performance by the brothers as they battled the odds. Local favourites Arpi Reinicke and Lucas Dreyer had a firm grip on the production vehicle category and were third on the road. The pair were trying to close in on the struggling Sulwald brothers, but were not taking any chances. Behind Reinicke and Dreyer, the Marius and Edith Bahrain Toyota Raceco was running in third in the special vehicle category. It was not all wine and roses for the Bahrains. They were gradually coming under attack from Wade Perrins and Charles van Rooyen, who were making a late charge in the Lolet Sandmaster. The Cliff Barker Mike Redden Land Rover was also still going strongly and putting in a late charge. The pair were third in the production vehicle category and were desperately trying to close in on Alfred and Tommy van Vuren in the Toyota Hilux. The unscheduled overnight trip to Johannesburg for spare parts for the Chef Bucky was also paying off for Bloemfontein artist Theo Coetzee and his brother Eugene. They were fourth in the production vehicle category and were holding down a place in the top 10 on the road. There were no dramas either for Alfred and Tommy van Vuren in the Toyota Hilux. The ultra-consistent van Vurens had second place in the production vehicle category in the bag. At the end of the day, the Land Rover Baberspan 1000 belonged to Klaus Degener and Thilo van Westenhagen. For Degener, it was the end of a 3-year drought, and a winning margin of 26 minutes is emphatic in any man's language.
No problems. Clean run from start to finish, and we could afford the luxury, in fact, just to stop at the back there and, when nature called. And picked up a flat wheel in the pan here, and had to go off the route a bit because of the bike making a bit of dust there. And obviously must hit a stake and got a back flat wheel, but it got me to the finish.
The brave Sulwald brothers trailed home second overall and second in the special vehicle category after a valiant effort. After battling engine problems all day, a flat wheel at the finish only compounded their problems. Arpi Reineke's wife anxiously waited at the finish line for her husband and Lucas Dreyer in the dealer team Toyota Land Cruiser. Last year's winners took the production vehicle category by a wide margin and were third overall. Vickers van Deventer on a three-wheel quad racer limped first across the line in the quad category, only to be later excluded from the results for taking a shortcut. For bike winner Richard Manning, there was another slice of South African motorsport history. It was only the second time a national championship event had been won on a 200 class machine.
When I knew I was in front, I just gave it a full go and thought maybe if the guys were going to catch me, I'd make them work for it.
A great win for Klaus Degener and Tilo van Westenhagen in the special vehicle category, followed by the Sewell brothers and the consistent Wade Perrins-Charles van Rooyen combination. Arpi Reineke and Lucas Dreyer took the production vehicle category ahead of Alfred van Vuren and the Land Rover of Cliff Barker and Mike Redden. For the second time, Richard Manning wins a national championship off-road event on a 200 class machine. It was a triumph too for Winston Yamaha with Daryl Curtis and Chris Dodd second and third. With Vickers van Deventer disqualified, Army Roberts took the quad racer category ahead of Christopher van der Merwe and Daryl O'Keefe. Highlights of the Land Rover Baberspan 1000 were proudly presented for your enjoyment by Land Rover Genuine Parts.